Hey y'all, this is the legendary Sonny G, Sonny with an O, not a U.
And this is your boy Sterling Moody.
And we are Effa Podcast.
Effa Podcast.
And thank you for listening to us. So make sure you tune in to Effa Podcast, a real N-word podcast where we talk about
real N-word stuff.
That's it. So make sure y'all tune in.
Effa Podcast.
Effa Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining in to Effa Podcast. And we are on the last show dedicated to conning while black. I am so excited because if you were listening to the other three shows, I had some wonderful guests who came in. I had some wonderful guests who called in, and I wasn't able to get to everybody who called in. And so this show, I am going to take the call-in people and speak with them. Especially the people that I was really interested in. And one of the first people, David Smola, who I reached out to, who said he would agree to call in on the show. David, are you on the call?
Yes. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you, David. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your participation. And how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, and you?
I'm doing fantastic. So really quickly, I just want to get what is it about, I guess, conning that you like the most? Like, what is it about cons that really?
The thing about conning that I like the most is that there is something for just about everybody.
Mm-hmm.
If you are interested in writing, if you're interested in gaming, if you're interested in cosplay, if you are interested, if you're an artist and you have that interest, there is something for everybody. You can go to just about any of these cons, and there's just so much out there for everybody.
Absolutely, and so much so that we spoke with C.S. Sherman earlier, and so for those listening, we are speaking with another of the co-founders or of the founders of the Black Geeks of Dragon Con group, correct?
That's correct.
And so we asked Mr. Sherman, but want to know from you, like, what differences have you seen, or not differences, I guess, what growth have you seen in the black population cosplaying over the last couple of years? Because the fact that there's even a group dedicated to that is a lot of progress over, let's just say, 5-10 years ago, where if you were a black kid going to Dragon Con, you just were on the lookout for other black kids, versus now you can go on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and look up this group and go, oh, okay, there are other black people conning. But what was that something that was intentionally thought of for you all to be able to have, people come to the group like that, or what was your process behind even putting that together?
Well, I don't know if C.S. Sherman told you the story, but when he used to go to a lot of these cons, he'd go back to his friends and his family, black people, and they'd say, well, I bet you were the only black person there. When my first year that I went to Dragon Con, somebody, one of my relatives said to me, well, that must have, you as a black person being there must be like what black people feel like being at the Republican National Convention. And so when we first started, it was an effort to show our people that black people do this. And so we said, well, we started out by taking pictures of black cosplayers and showing them, but we said, well, let's get everybody together and take a picture. And you were talking earlier about the growth of black cosplay. The first time we got people together to take a picture, it was maybe 20 of us. And when those pictures went online, a lot of people saw those and said, I want to be a part of this. We had, the first time we did it, we had black people that were just walking by, cosplayers, who just stopped and took part. And we've had, every year, we have at least a few people that see our pictures and say, oh, I want to be a part of this next year. How can I be a part of this next year? Some of them don't even cosplay. It's something that they were thinking about, and they just seeing other people like them doing it gave them that push. 2 years ago, when we were at DragonCon, we were coming back from the photo shoot, and we got to the hotel, and we noticed one of the guys who was working at the hotel came up to us and told us that he had actually been at our photo shoot. He had been thinking about cosplaying, and he had been thinking about going to DragonCon. And we apparently handed him a business card for the photo shoot the year before. And so he just decided that the next year he'd go to DragonCon and he'd come to our photo shoot. And so he showed up. So we did not plan it this way, but we have actually been amazed and overwhelmed by the effect that this photo shoot has had on a lot of people.
Absolutely. It gets bigger every year, and to the point where people look
Yeah.
to try to figure out what they want to wear specifically to the shoot. It's not even about what I want to cosplay to DragonCon anymore. Now it's what am I going to wear specifically for the Black Geeks of DragonCon photo shoot.
Yeah, we started out with about 20 people. This year, we haven't done the full numbers, but it was at least 200 people out there.
That is dope. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, David. I'm going to get to a few more callers, but before we let you go, other than the Black Geeks of DragonCon group on Facebook and the Black Geeks of DC group on Instagram, where else can people reach you?
We can also be found at Black Geeks DC on Twitter. We also have a website, blackgeeksofdragoncon.com.
See, I didn't even know about that. Now I've got to go and put that in my favorites in my browser because I've got I follow everything else. Didn't know that there was a website. That is dope. Well, David, thank you very much. You have a great rest of your evening.
All right. Thank you for having me.
It is no problem. So, people, like I'm saying, like, I hope you listen to all 4 shows because I don't even know how to appropriately explain how DragonCon is. DragonCon is actually the only convention that I've been to. I want to go to more. I want to go to the BlurredCon, WakandaCon in Chicago, and the New York Comic-Con, the San Diego. I want to go to all of these, but DragonCon is its own environment. It's self-contained. It doesn't feel like a convention. Like when I think about conventions, I usually think about trade shows and how there's really just hallways and lines and booths and tables of merchandise and maybe a couple panels and things of that nature. But again, I've never only been to one. But going to DragonCon feels a lot more. It feels a lot less like a trade show and a lot more like a family reunion with geeks. And so within that family reunion, you find your favorite cousins, I guess, if you're one of the Black Geeks. And so so another to get another perspective on that, we have Jordan. Are you on?
Yes, I am.
We have Jordan Slade. Thank you so much for being on the show so late after I told you to call in. We had some
no problem.
We had some technical difficulties. I overscheduled guests, and I'm overwhelmed by the response of people who wanted to participate and actually share their experiences. Because like I'm calling these block of shows Conning While Black. So thank you so much for your time. And so what is, I guess, because we already did the Black and Nerdy show, but I want to give you a chance to go back and say anything you might have wanted to say about your experiences with being Black and Nerdy. So what does that mean to you? Like, does it mean anything different than just being a regular nerd? The fact that you're Black and a nerd, does it mean anything different to you when you see other Black nerds?
Well, as I've gotten older, the definition has changed. Because I think when I was young, it was just being a nerd, and you just got picked on. But as I got older, I started noticing different things. And then it seems like with black folk, it wasn't popular to be nerdy until 10, 15 years ago. And the more that I started getting out and expanding, the people I go see and the con and going to a con, I started seeing more people like me. Now, granted, I go to some cons. We just had a local one here that I think I was probably the only black person I saw. But I go to Dragon Con, and I'm like, wow, I see that. And then I know that you have cons that are specifically African American motivated, and now it seems like it's a whole separate culture, almost on its own. And I'm amazed to see the growth of it. It lets me feel like I'm being included. It lets me not be ashamed at the fact that I am a nerd and I like comics and I like sci-fi and I like fantasy and I'm into all that because I see more people like myself doing it. And even being black and nerdy, but being black and older and nerdy, you see all ages, all different kind of races doing it, and it's just, man, it's overwhelming when I think about it.
I can understand that, and so with me, I think about it with my daughter is pretty much into anime culture and Marvel movies and things of that nature, and I just think sometimes, I used to get stuffed in lockers and chased home so that you can freely wear your Captain Marvel costume to school. It's like I feel like being a nerd, being a black nerd, like you said, it wasn't so easily accepted back in the day.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like we went through the civil rights of being a black nerd,
Oh yeah. I mean, the past 3 years ago, 2 years ago, every year for the past 10 years, I've been going to DragCon, my best friend and I. And about 3 years ago, our daughter started coming with us. The first time my daughter has come, every year she's cosplayed. The first 2 years she had on a Spider-Girl outfit. And I know she was nervous because she wants to be a nerd, but she was a nerd in denial. And the first time she went there and all these Spider people who were cosplaying, all these people who were cosplaying Spider folks wanted to get her in the picture, she was hooked. And to see that's our bond. That's what we do every year. And to see how that affects her, man, it's awesome. And I've seen families, entire African American families down there cosplaying the Incredibles, and it was just cool to see that. And I'm like, man, I wish that more people could see this piece like I see it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jordan, for sharing your experience. And before we let you go, is there anything else you would like to say, or any social media information you'd like to give out?
I do pictures. I'm on Facebook, Images by Jordan. I'm a very amateur photographer, and a lot of the stuff I do, I take cosplay pictures and all that. So I'll be posting some more of those on there. I'm actually thinking about starting up a podcast of my own here pretty soon. So, and maybe one day you and I, you can talk. I love to talk to you, so you can give me some pointers on that.
I was gonna say, but invite me on as a guest. As you can tell, I like to talk, so we can do this.
Well, you know what, man, I'll AM you when we get done, and maybe we can connect offline. How about that?
Absolutely, Jordan. Well, thank you very much for joining in on us. And like I said, people, you come out to these things, and you never know how you're gonna exactly take in the whole experience, because on one hand, if you're from my generation, growing up in the 90s, you have to side eye everything. You have to look and see, is there anybody pointing and laughing? Is there anybody gesturing your way? Is there anybody who's making fun of you? And there are a lot more acceptable behaviors, or it's a lot more acceptable to do things now than it was when I was younger. So I'm still looking around trying to see if anybody's pointing and laughing, and my daughter or her friends or anybody is just like, calm down. You know, it's perfectly fine. Everybody here is wearing a toga and a diaper. So, and it's just I remember when I my dad is a Trekkie, and as a Trekkie, I remember the first I remember seeing Geordie LaForge and being like, okay, so what is the dude from Reading Rainbow doing on a spaceship? And why is the dude from Reading Rainbow blind? And I didn't understand the significance of Geordie LaForge until I got older. He's the ship's communication officer, I believe. I think. See, now I might be getting my Star Trek characters wrong. Oh well. Well, we have another call in, so I'll try to remember what Geordie did. But Damani, are you on the line?
Yes, sir. How's it going, man?
It is going fantastic. Thank you for calling in. I'm so sorry for calling late. We had a lot more participate. I was expecting, black folks to do what black folks do and get a whole bunch of, my tire, got flattened, or my boss called me into work and stuff like that, and I didn't. And so I ended up having a really overwhelming response. But I wanted to make sure that we got back to speaking with you. And just let us know.
Hey, it is all good.
And I really appreciate that you still had the time to speak with us. So, basically it's conning while black, and so I wanted to get some different perspectives on what that means to you. And so I remember you said you were interested on saying something for a funny thing happened at con, and what is a really interesting story you have about while conning, and not necessarily even Dragon Con if you've been to more cons, but what's a really interesting con story you have?
Well, to me, I think it's awesome. Basically, for a long time, at a lot of conventions, we were very much underrepresented. And, like in more recent years, you're seeing a lot more folks of color out there, and I think that's a beautiful thing. But just thinking about the topic, like a few years back, this may have been about maybe 10 or so years ago, I'm kind of dating myself a bit, but I was at Dragon Con, and if you know what it's like on Saturdays afternoon, it's kind of crazy out there.
Oh, yeah.
But I was out there with my old gaming group, and all brothers of the light of persuasion. I was the darkest guy there. But we're working our way through the crowd and everything, and I passed by two other black dudes. And just like, hey, man, what's going on? Not much, man. You good? You good, man? I mean, just quick conversation, and, we just kept it moving. And then my buddy just kind of looked at me afterwards and was like, hey, is that a friend of yours? And I was like, no, man, I just met him. And it's like, I think one of the more beautiful things that I've seen is like the acknowledgement, as I call it. It's like, you see folks that look like us in situations that we're typically not at, and like seeing other folks there, it's like instant camaraderie. It's like, look, I don't know who you are, but I know we kind of like the same sorts of things and stuff like that. And I just think that's like a real cool thing when we come across it,
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's just something that we see more often.
Somebody had mentioned earlier, they were talking about how when you see groups of black people at conventions, that it's kind of like going to a HBCU. It's you kind of feel the same camaraderie, like, oh, there's a group that I fit in with, but except for it's more like, oh dang, there's a whole group of people for me, instead of just finding where you fit in, there's the group that you fit in already there. Kind of deal, like, hey,
exactly. It's like for a while, it's like we couldn't be into this sort of thing. It's like, oh, you're into that weird stuff,
right?
And just seeing folks that look like you into that same sort of thing, it's just like, oh man, it's like I'm not alone out here.
Right. No longer are we the Lamars from Revenge of the Nerds. They Lamar was so unique that they couldn't just make him a black nerd. He had to be, the gay black nerd. And now that's like commonplace. It's no matter how unique something was back in the 80s and 90s for us to do, it's now commonplace here in 2019. And it's like, no longer are we the token members of any particular group, rather it's nerds or anything. Now there's not just one black kid playing Dungeons and Dragons. Now there's probably a whole black guild that you'd be lucky to, find a white kid in. So,
it's funny. It's funny that you mentioned that. Like my old gaming group, we actually did have a token white guy, and everyone else was black.
See, nerd culture is just taking over, man. Well, Damani, thank you for calling in. We appreciate your time. Before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to say or any social media information you'd like to give out?
You know what? I'm pretty boring, so I ain't got a whole lot of stuff out there. But Damani Zayas is my Twitter handle. I do some occasional text, and then just talking about like different projects I'm on. Do some writing, some drawing, crack some bad jokes. That's normal sort of thing. But you know what? Keep on doing what you're doing, man. I love the whole concept of the show, and I will be checking back in.
Appreciate you, Damani. Thank you very much. All right. So, like I said at the beginning of the show, I was getting everybody on the show that called in that I wasn't able to get to. And I'm probably gonna have to do another call-in show because I'm really interested in hearing more perspectives from this. I should probably do a semi-quarterly black nerd show for for Effa podcast. It just feels like a subject that is really deep and has a lot of layers that we need to get into. So the last guest that we have for the night, I'm very interested in speaking with. He's actually one of the owners of a very popular gaming slash comic book slash science fiction shops in the North DeKalb Mall, I believe. Tony, are you on the line?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and thank you so much. I was just telling the people how busy you are and how much of an honor it is to have you on the show. I'm sorry, what's the name of the comic shop again?
It's Challenges Games and Comics. We're located here in North DeKalb Mall.
You're still at the mall right now, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I'm still here at the shop. We just got through doing pre-releases for the new Magic the Gathering set. So I've had tournaments that I've been running like all week. And so, I just stayed here at the shop, waited for you guys. Because we had guys playing all the way to like 7:45.
I appreciate that. It's crazy that you said that Magic the Gathering. Let me ask you something. In those games that you were running, how many people of color would you say you've noticed throughout the day? Just a rough estimate.
Right now, it used to be more when we were on Memorial Drive.
Mm-hmm.
But now at this point, we're probably down to about 10%.
10% is still a pretty big number compared to, I guess, what it used to be. I used to not be able to have conversations about Magic the Gathering with other black people, and now I've noticed that I can now eavesdrop on a whole conversation between black people talking about Magic the Gathering. I'm like, what are they talking? Are they talking about Magic? And that used to not be something that happened. So I guess, when would you say you noticed the upswing in black folks playing Magic the Gathering?
Well, with that is not like a straightforward answer with that one. Because the longest time, my shop was on Memorial Drive over in Stone Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it was in the hood. All right, so I was actually creating Magic players of color. It was the other way around when we were on Memorial Drive. 90% of my customers were playing Magic the Gathering. And they were of color.
And like you said you were creative, so people were coming in and you were showing them how to play, Magic or what this game. People had questions and you were showing them what that was all about.
Yes.
Dope. So what?
We've been a Wizards of the Coast premier store for over double-digit years.
And because you all do hold some of the more, I guess, uh, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? More popular tournaments in the city, if I'm not mistaken. Like, there's not a lot of places that really even hold gaming tournaments anymore, except for you all and a handful of other places, right?
No, Magic the Gathering right now is the most popular it's ever been, along with Dungeons and Dragons. So there's actually been new uh, comic book and gaming stores that have been popping up even, closer to the perimeter. It used to be, all the big mega shops were up in Gwinnett County, but now, because of the success of my store and people actually seeing that there's Magic players, inside the city, there've been other competitors and stuff who've come closer to the city and started to open up stores.
Okay.
But the way I, basically have had my business is that I was always about cultivating new players and not trying to get players from other stores.
Right.
So that's always something I've done is like, people come in, they show an interest, and we give them demo decks, we sit them down, we teach them how to play.
So
the same thing as stuff like Dungeons and Dragons. You got an interest in Dungeons and Dragons, we invite you to come to a session, you can observe, or you can jump right on in and play.
And how long have you yourself been in the? Because what is it? I think the category of game is just multiplayer. What is it? Is a multiplayer RPG, correct? That's technically what the category of the games are.
Well, multiplayer RPG is more of what you're doing on the computer. All right, Dungeons and Dragons is just a straight up role playing game.
Okay.
Pencil, papers, dice, a book. All right, and then Magic the Gathering is what's considered a collectible card game or a trading card game.
And how long have you yourself been involved in doing in Dungeons and Dragons and things of that nature? Like, when did you start?
Okay. Well, I actually got exposed to Dungeons and Dragons back in the early 80s because I played chess on the East Atlanta Chess Club, and I was first board. And we had actually just going to be playing the game, and I think we had just beaten Parkview. And those guys were like really, really friendly, considering we had just beat them. And they were like, well, hey, do you guys play Dungeons and Dragons? And so, back in the 80s, I'm thinking it's like, I'm a proper little black nerd. I collect comic books. I play chess. Then all of a sudden this guy, from the suburbs is like introducing me to Dungeons and Dragons. So our whole chess team went over to this kid's house and they taught us how to play Dungeons and Dragons. And we were like, man, there's so much more stuff going on that we didn't know about being in our little hood.
But that was it. From the moment you were introduced, that was just your thing now. Your thing is now Dungeons and Dragons. You were gonna find your own guild and make sure you played, correct?
Well, like I said, I didn't really, jump heavily into the Dungeons and Dragons. I played Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm more so into the strategy combat game. So I lean more toward Magic than I do role playing.
So you probably like Risk then. You ever played Risk?
Oh yeah, Risk, yeah. But like I said, it's one thing and stuff when you're like into like stuff like Risk and Monopoly and the card board games that people used to get for like Toys R Us. But there's a whole nother section of what we call like the Euro game players. Like if you think you like playing money strategy games like Monopoly, we need to like introduce you to Settlers of Catan to take it to a whole completely different level.
Oh wow. Oh man. Well, we are actually at coming up at the end of the show. Tony, I once again thank you so much for your time, and go ahead and shout out your business and wherever we can find you on social media.
Okay, well that's Challenges Games and Comics. You can look us up on Facebook. Just Google us. We have the Twitter, the Twitch. We've got all different connections. Also, like I said, we actually run a convention, every March, second weekend of March every year. Come on out, check out the convention. It's free to the public. and at the Atlanta Sci-Fi and Fantasy Expo.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tony. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Effa Podcast, and I want to apologize to the guests that I was not able to call back, Simone, Dijon, a couple of other folks. I'm gonna try and get you guys on a future show so that we can talk, because I had fun today. I had a blast recording these set of shows where we're talking about conning while black. Thank you to all of the guests who called in and sat in on the previous shows. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Effa Podcast, and I am the legendary Sonny G. And you know you can find me everywhere at Trap Nerd Sonny, Sonny with an O, not a U. I'm not a Muppet trainer. And also Trap Nerd ENT. And if you like the show, go to patreon.com/Trap Nerd ENT. Donate so that we can keep doing this. Otherwise, I will be back with another set of shows later on, but y'all be cool like how y'all be cool. Peace. This is the legendary Sonny G, and thank you for tuning in to Effa Podcast. You can also go ahead and follow us at Trap Nerd ENT on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can also go to our Patreon if you enjoy what we do and make a donation, patreon.com/Trap Nerd ENT, and be on the lookout for future events. Sign up for our email list at trapnerdent@gmail.com. Again, thank you for listening. Y'all be cool like how y'all be cool.